Happy day after Thanksgiving. You're all bloated as I am. Or are you feeling pretty good about it today? I mean, look, this is the day when we get to relax, except for you, Coach. You're headed to Ann Arbor for, I guess you call it the granddaddy of them all, like the Rose Bowl. There's no better rivalry than Ohio State, Michigan.
Yeah, they call it the game, and I was part of it for 7 years, actually 9 years, 2 in the GA, and then I grew up in the rivalry. But yeah, there's a great one down in Gainesville as well, and a bunch of great rivalries across the country this weekend.
I love rivalry weekend. I don't really care that much about the records. And last night's Egg Bowl was good for about 2 quarters. then Mississippi broke through and did what you thought they might do. So, well, Urban, I hope you had a happy Thanksgiving. I always say it's my favorite holiday of the year because there's football and food and family and the faith and no gifts. So that's a good holiday for me. And of course, a long weekend. Urban, looking at the years at Thanksgiving and the games you've been in, I mean, my gosh, it would seem that Ohio State, Michigan dwarfs everything. But talk about Florida State. You had a pretty good one going there with them.
Yeah, when I was a head coach, we made the rivalry a huge game, and that goes back to Bowling Green versus Toledo, and that was over Thanksgiving weekend. And so our kids became kind of numb to Thanksgiving. It's football weekend. Yeah, we're going to enjoy our faith, our family, and we had a nice turkey dinner and et cetera, but there is a cloud, or not a cloud, but there is it was bigger than just Thanksgiving. It was this monumental game that became part of our lives. And then we went to Utah. It was Utah against a team down south called BYU. And then we went to Florida, and it was a school out west against Florida State. And then we came here, and it was a team up north. So we have 4 grandkids now, 3 kids, 3 spouses all together. Shelly was in heaven, and we had a ball. And I actually, I'm engaging now. Back then, I usually passed out at about, everybody would laugh, about 6, 7 o'clock. I passed out. So tired from the week's work. Because we give the players off, and the coaches work, extra hard so they get the players out of there and the coaches out of there on Thursday.
Just like there's no crying in baseball, there's no off in football. You're going to grind it 24/7 on that.
Hey, Coach, my dad wasn't a head coach of a football team, but he was a sports writer. So let me tell you, it was not that much different around my household. Sports and football and all that dwarfed anything else. So I somewhat relate there.
I love it. Before we jump in here real fast, I know you're in a car to Ann Arbor, and I want to pass along a comment from a reader and a caller whose opinion I really do respect a lot. He called me yesterday, and we talk every week. The astute football fan. He said, I want to tell you that the conversation you and Urban had about special teams, he said, was really terrific, enlightening. I've never heard that before. It makes total sense, and I was really impressed how Urban has thought this out about the head coach has got to be the special teams coach.
Yeah, that was something I thought long and hard, and I told you when I was hired as a special teams coach, I had no respect for it. It's because I didn't understand it. And as a head coach, you have to find every way possible to find a W, a win, field position shifts in games, and my respect for that became immense. I'm telling you, there's no chance we win those 2 national champs of Florida without the special teams we had. And, your best players play it, your best coaches coach it, you reward guys. When we got on planes to go to South Carolina, to Mississippi, to Tennessee, the special teams players sat in the first offensive line, and special teams players got to sit in first class.
You had a pecking order there for your championship club and also your special teams, and I think the really cogent point that you made I had not thought of, which I'm sure you thought through, was if you got a bunch of first round draft choices you're grooming, guys that want to get on the field, if you can get them on special teams and encourage them, then that gives them a chance to have a quicker ascent. And as you point out, you don't get the Janoris Jenkins and all the great players to go play on special teams unless you're the head coach.
Right. Well, the head coach has to. I don't understand any other way, to be honest with you. So the other thing I added is that my entire career as a head coach on Friday, any meal, any team meal, the punt team ate first, special teams players ate first, and then the wide receivers always ate last. And if you were not on special teams, you were sitting there watching everyone else eat for about a half hour until you got a chance to eat. And then the quarterbacks ate second to last. It's because they get enough publicity. They get enough. I wanted everybody to watch, James Smith, our punter, Eric Wilbur, et cetera, Chaz Henry, so everyone understands their value. And I would try to do that in the media as well, making sure that every time I could possibly do it, I'd speak about the value of our special teams. And I'll tell you what, Gator Nation really loved it. I remember when we'd get the third down and the stadium would stand under its feet when that punt block team went out there. Because there was a good chance something was going to happen.
Well, South Carolina happened. That was certainly that wasn't like a punt. That was a kick. But I've never seen anybody put that kind of emphasis on it. So obviously it works, and hopefully some other people picked up on that and took notes. Urban, let's advance quickly to the game at Florida. I know Brendan's dying to ask you about this. He loves Max Brown, and I don't know how much film you've seen on the kid, but he came in last week off the bench. You know how hard it is to just step up and start be cold and play. And his legs brought him a new dimension, and the kid really looked good. Now, nothing wrong with the Graham Merz. He was playing terrific. Do you know anything about Max Brown? What does a running quarterback, which he can do both, but he does that well, what dimension can it add for the offense in this day and time? And what do you think, if he plays well, that will mean to Florida?
Yeah, we don't cover the SEC, but I do watch Florida. I still love the Gators. Obviously, a big part of our life is there, so I do watch them. And Graham Mertz, I told you I recruited Graham Mertz. I thought he was, he struggled at Wisconsin, but so did everyone there for a couple of years. So he's had a nice career. I think he's back next year. Graham's back, right?
Yes, he has not said. He has not said, but I can't see why he wouldn't be, especially after being injured.
But Max, he looks like an athlete. I don't know a lot about him, but I did watch the video. And you know how I feel about, really in my career, we had Dwayne Haskins. Chris Sleek wasn't real mobile, but he was mobile enough. And then Cardell Jones really wasn't a runner either. So we adapted our offense, but you know how I am. I love that guy that can run. That just puts so much stress on a defense that, Tim Tebow went down as the second most efficient passer in college football history. Think about that.
Yeah.
Second most ever. Ironically, Bradford was number one. And one of the reasons was Tim saw very clean coverages. He didn't see a lot of mess in the back end of a defense. It was very clean because we ran him enough that if you did some, man under or bracket coverage, you better defend Tim Tebow. And so that's one of the reasons I love having an athletic quarterback.
Brendan, go ahead, Brendan.
Max Brown is that dual athlete, baseball guy. Obviously, he's athletic enough to run and throw. Just seeing that read option with this offense was sort of a whole different wrinkle. I wanted you to go to. I know you just talked about it, but maybe expand a little bit more what it means for maybe a team like Florida to have that extra wrinkle here. The quarterback that's making the decisions quickly, and knows when to take off and knows when to make a throw or do something else. How effective against Florida State do you think? And I don't know how much film you've seen on Florida State, but obviously probably some. How effective do you think that Max Brown and the read option can be against a team like Florida State at home this Saturday? With it feels like to me it could be somewhat of a game changer.
It's absolutely a game changer. And Dan Mullen and I in 2001, I was hired as Bowling Green as a head coach, and we, the program I think was 1-10 when we got there, and we're playing Missouri in the opening game, and they have better players than we did. and that's just reality. That happens. And so how do you run equalizer football? What do you do? And number one is option football. That's why you see the military academies run wishbone. The problem with wishbone, you won't get hired as a, the fans don't, it's kind of boring football. So we created the spread option. And it was basically wishbone principles that you ran with elite players. And you threw the ball enough that you could still recruit the elite player. But what we ran at Florida was a version of the wishbone offense with Tim Tebow, Chris Rainey, Jeff Demps, and then you had Percy and James and Cooper and Murphy. So you had elite athletes around, but if you're not defending the wishbone or the spread option, that'll cut you like a knife. And you saw many games where if someone wasn't ready for the spread option, by the second quarter, Dan Mullen and I are all over the headset saying, this is unbelievable. We can run what we want here. And then the other thing is if you spend time defending the spread option, which you have to, that also cleans up the coverages for the pass game. So it works together. I love it. I believe in it. I don't know how many teams still run the true spread option anymore. I wish they would.
Well, if you ever go back and coach in college again, you can put it back in. I thought it was more like the single wing myself, because Tim was like a big single wing tailback, and man, I'd hate that that guy.
Yeah. Do you have to spy the quarterback on defense? Then is that sort of the?
Oh, you have to be responsive. There's double and triple option. So this is really good stuff. So double option, you have to have someone responsible for the quarterback, someone for the tailback. Okay, triple option, you add one other one, and that you have someone for quarterback. The tailback, the quarterback, and a pitch guy. So you have three defenders that you better have on those people. And if you don't, that's when you see those big hits hit. And that's in the defense. One of the reasons I put that stuff in is because it drove our defense coaches crazy. Tim Beckman was our defense coordinator at Bowling Green, and then Charlie Strong and Greg Madison in Florida. And I would walk into that room and say, tell me about this. And they'd look at me and go, gosh, I could tell in their face they hate that, because you have to play very disciplined football. You take guys like Carlos Dunlap and some of those great players we have, and it slows them down. And that's what spread option football does.
Talk about that trip you took with Dan, and I forget who all won it, when you guys sort of invented the spread option.
Yeah, down to Louisville. We were at Notre Dame, two very young coaches, real young. And we went down there with the intent on staying one day, and we had to go out and buy some clothes because we stayed for 3 days. We went and bought toothbrushes. I remember both of us driving to wherever we drove back then in 1998 or something like that. And that's when we sat together for 3 days in Louisville, Kentucky, and penciled up the spread option.
Well, Urban, I know you believe in practice. You say Bloody Tuesday was the phone setter for you. Does this mean anything? I'm reading that Trevor Etienne said that Max Brown has been lights out this week in practice. The quote was, he can make those crazy plays with his feet that kind of have you in awe. I'm excited to see him play on Saturday. What does that sound like to you when you hear a teammate saying that?
Oh, that makes you, as a head coach, you're fired up. And remember the term, he's a gamer?
Yeah.
We don't use that at Florida. We didn't. I used to we're not interested in gamers. We're interested in practicers. And we believe practice makes you better. And so to hear that, I can't, I'll be honest with you. Now that I've heard that, I can't wait to watch what they do against, because Florida State's good, but Florida State lost their quarterback, and Florida State's beatable. I'll tell you, the Gators I'm telling you, buddy, Brendan, the Gators can get this game now. They can. This will be a monument. If you can beat Tennessee like you did, you've had struggles. You have a good recruiting class coming in. You need to hold on to this recruiting class. How do you do it? You find a way to get that swamp fired up and beat the Seminoles, and you can keep that class, and it'll be a good springboard.
Well, that's what's going to happen in terms of the swamp. It will be lit on Saturday night. Urban, you've seen it lit before. And if ever will has anything to do with the game, that's when Florida will win. I got to go back to last week. How much better can you play and still not win the game than Florida did against Missouri? My heart went out to those guys because they played so, had it right here. You can question some of the things that happened, the strategy, whatever, but the fact is, what could you want out of a coach besides not making mental mistakes when your team is playing its heart out every down? And they did. And if it was in terms of deserving to win, they deserved it. They didn't get it done, though, at the end of the game. That was a heartbreaker. I tweeted out, the football gods hate us. That's what it felt like.
Yeah, I went back to watch. I watched that game for two reasons. One, I don't know much about Missouri, but they're having a hell of a year, and I wanted to see if Coach Napier and that staff, because I'm pulling for him. Brandon Spikes is down there now, and boy, do they play hard, and that's a credit first of all to the head coach, but also to leadership on that team. That means he's got good dudes down there, because in today's day and age, you see it all the time. I'm not going to list the programs. There's a couple programs right now shut it down. And the players won't go to the bowl game, and that's a culture issue. I don't believe what Florida has. After watching it, I don't know a lot, but I know the head coach did a hell of a job last week. They just got to go win the game now. It's all done. Go find a way to beat Florida State, and then you're off and running.
And if they do, Urban, and I'll let you get in, Brendan, think about how that changes everything. You go from a 5-7 team, which, by the way, still or to get to bowl games, but you get to a 6-6 season, not a losing season. You're in a bowl game, and you've ruined the season of your rival. That game means so much to Florida right now. I can't remember a game that meant more.
Yeah, I'm with you. I just hope that the players' agents, the players' families, the players' third uncles are all on the same aligned with Billy Napier and the Gator Nation of how important this game is. It is your rival.
It's everything.
Your hated rival. Go win this game.
Yeah.
And Brendan, he never lost any. He won them all, it seems like.
I know. I was either there or watched them for sure. Hey, Coach, just going back to Missouri, and not even Missouri, I'm just fascinated by these conversations that we have. And is there? I know conventional, wisdom is to play for three. I totally get it. Get them to run their timeouts at the end of that game. I understand. But is there ever, a time maybe where you got Dan Mullen on headset, you got a guy like Max Brown's come in, the defense is on their heels, your defense is struggling a little bit. Do you ever play for 7 there or 6 points there? And I'm not asking you to go back and question what the call was. That's done and gone. I don't know. In my head, I think, is there ever a time where Dan Mullen says we got to get in the end zone? This guy's playing grade reoption. Defense is struggling. We don't give him the ball back. This guy's can kick a 61-yard field goal. Is that something that ever plays in, or do you always play for 3 there?
No, first of all, it depends on the team, the situation. It also depends on the health of your team. If you feel, that you can extend a game and win this thing, then you keep playing. But if you ever have a chance on the road against a good team to end it, you end it. I'm not questioning Coach Napier at all because I don't know the whole situation. I don't know the health of his team. That's something that only he knew.
Beat up.
If they're beat up.
All freshman defense, I mean.
Yeah. So, but Dan and I talk to Dan now a lot, now that he's not coaching as well. And the two of us worked, Dan Mullen, there's no chance we win those 2 titles without him. The success we had at Utah, Dan and I, basically we put that offense together. We worked together. And, I'll go against Cal Berkeley one time at Utah. We're lining up to win the field goal. And he says to me, and, we had, another couple offensive coaches, but we have Alex Smith. We're not going to tie this game. We're going to score. We're not putting this in the hands of a kicker. We have Alex Smith. Put it in his hands. And we did. We won the game. With that comes risk. The reality is that, with that comes risk.
Well, yeah, and a good question, Brendan, and I think that's the strategy thing. Spurrier probably more likely to go for 7. The handbook from coaches probably says play it down, take the timeouts, and kick the field goal and win. But who knows? It all is a gut feeling, which, by the way, let's get real quick to the national scene. Big news Saturday. I'm sure got some great stuff going on this weekend. The people are saying Florida State could win out and not make it. I found that hard to believe. But Texas appears to be in the driver's seat, a team that you've liked from day one. How do you see that play? Without giving me your Final Four, which I know you have to save for your TV show, tell me about those two teams, Florida State getting in versus Texas.
It's hard to see a scenario. You know, the committee is supposed to look at the team, and that quarterback got hurt, and he's not a good quarterback. He's a great quarterback, and prayers to him and his family because that was a tough injury. We lost J.T. Barrett in 2014. Cardell Jones comes in and proved that he's legitimate. So they picked us over TCU and Baylor back then. So I've seen Texas up close. That's the best looking team I've seen all year. That's the best looking as far as the size, the speed, the athletes. I think they're the best looking team I've seen all year. They had the best win so far. They went to Tuscaloosa and really beat up Alabama. Oregon, I think right now they're one of the best 4 teams in the country, even though they have a loss. If they continue to go, I don't know how they stay out. The team that could be in trouble is the loser of this game, the Ohio State-Wolverine game. If they lose this game, I'm not sure, unless it's a 1-point game, I think the loser's out. There's too many other – Alabama right now, the problem is Alabama lost to Texas.
Yeah.
And if someone puts Alabama ahead of Texas, and I have Alabama way up there in my picks, but you can't do that. Then why play the games? I know someone says, well, Alabama's playing much better now than they did earlier. I get that. But number one criteria is head-to-head. So I have Oregon, Texas, then Alabama as my one-loss teams right now. And I'm not sure that's going to change, even if the loser of this, the rivalry game here.
And you got Washington in.
No, I think Washington's going to lose to Oregon.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Fair enough. It's going to be interesting. Urban, I know we only got a couple minutes. This is the time when coaches get fired and hired. You were one of 2 coaches of Florida that never to get fired, you and Spurrier. But you did experience leaving and then decided not to. Talk about the emotional trauma that goes with that for the families of the coaches. I've been around coaches all my life. I've seen some really unfortunate things happen. Don't get a fair shot, and something happens, and you lose. You move your family, got to look for a job. It must be really debilitating for a coach to have been up here for several seasons and then be shopping for a job. What's that like to a family?
That's horrible. It rips you apart, and the head coach is the guy that they get paid well. They get the publicity, good and bad, but the worker bees behind the scenes, it breaks your heart. And that's why when I left Florida, that broke my heart, because a lot of the guys were able to stay. Coach Muschamp came in and did, that's his prerogative to do what he did. And, guys are left out. And they got left out not for failure, but because, I made a decision to step down. So when I retired from Ohio State, I really wanted to, I wouldn't have done it unless they would have let me name a successor, Ryan Day, which we did. So everybody got jobs, everybody, all the behind-the-scenes people that work so hard. You're talking about an army of people that were able to keep their jobs. So, yeah, I think, once again, I cringe when I hear the fans and people say, fire him, fire him, fire him. I'm like, wait a minute now. I get it, and that's why college football is so great, is the intensity of the fans, but it's also the human beings on the other side of that.
Brendan, he kept a few guys around. It turned out pretty well for some of the defensive coordinators he had, right, Urban? You kept Charlie Strong. You kept when you went to Luke. You kept Luke up in Ohio. You had enough sense to know that a guy who had that much knowledge was a valuable tool for you, and you look past your ego, and you kept those guys. How did that pay off?
Yeah, I always kept the D coordinators, and it wasn't on purpose. Obviously Charlie Strong's like a brother to me, and I love him. And, he was, once again, we don't win without him. That's how good a coach he was. And I brought Greg Madison to run the defense with him. So, yeah, I think anytime you can keep them, you keep them. And I had a history of doing that.
All right, well, coaches are getting hired. Give us the inside scoop now, Urban. Now you've got at least 25 offers this week already, I'm sure. It's getting into the hundreds of millions you're turning down every day. That's okay. Talk about some open jobs now. Texas A&M, that's a plum job for somebody. Have you heard any good names?
What's amazing to me is Texas A&M. I was having a conversation with someone, and they've not won a national championship since the 30s. They haven't been ranked number one, I believe, until since the 50s. And you're talking about a top 5 place, and most importantly, you put a 300-mile radius around them, you have every player you need. People still question when I chose Florida over Notre Dame. It was the weather and et cetera, and Steve Spurrier, what he did. But the real reason, I had young kids, and I didn't want to recruit the country. I wanted to recruit Florida. I wanted to be home. And in Texas, you can do that. You just recruit. I told you this story before. You know how many players I missed when I recruited Texas for 20 years? 0. They were all good players. They all come from great programs, and they all had great families. I'm a huge fan of Texas high school football.
Well,
College Station
money alone won't do it, Brendan. I'm sorry. Go ahead, because we saw it.
I'm just saying, College Station in Gainesville seems a little similar kind of place. Just the fan base, good recruiting, that kind of thing. It's almost like it's a similar fishbowl in a lot of ways. Is that intimidating to a coach at all?
I actually
a hard job.
When Coach Napier had a couple losses, I actually had a flashback like, there's nowhere to go. I'd come home after, and, once again, it was I caused a lot of these issues on myself, but, I just didn't want to go anywhere. Shelly's a social person, and we have kids, and I go to my kids' baseball games, softball games, volleyball games, and I'd go home. I just didn't go many places because, when we won, I was kind of, you're okay. But if we lost, I just was embarrassed. I was disappointed. I was devastated. I felt like I was letting down people. And that's, once again, that's the human side of the coaching that people, there's that bum. Wait a minute now. It's not a bum. The guy's a father, that guy's a husband, that guy's, he's doing his best. So, yeah, but, and everybody says, well, that's why they pay you. And I get that. And you're right. But it's also, there's human being on the other side of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Shelley want to know why you had to leave Fort Collins. Can't we stay here, Urban?
We'd still be there right now. Yeah.
That's the way it was. Well, Coach, have a great weekend. Enjoy the game. We'll be watching on Big Noon. Hopefully we'll be able to tee this up again next week. Best Fridays in football. Best show of the week, best time, and always great to be with Urban Meyer. Coach, appreciate your time.
And take Florida on the show. It's a lock. I'm telling you. I'm the only one out there taking him in all of our podcasts and everything. Everyone thinks I'm a little bit crazy. I think Florida wins that game. So, from me to you, Coach, you and I can be simpatico on here, and pick Florida.
Got an insider, Urban. There you go.
All right, boys. Hey, I love you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Same to you. Love you. Best to your family. Thank you very much. All right. Urban Meyer. That's always fun. And Brenda, I know you had a nice Thanksgiving at the house over the weekend, and people don't know you're quite the cook. Yeah, something a skill you did not learn from me, by the way.
I feel like we're in the Brady Bunch right now with this big black stripe.
I know. I'm trying to get it down.
Like there's a gap between it.
Yeah, I know, Brent. Just have to live with it for 2 more seconds. You're done. Okay.
I just feel like that we can't seem to get past. But I turned the wrong way. Yeah, I did. We had a nice Thanksgiving. There we go. I was just kidding. We just had a nice Thanksgiving. Very quiet. Very quietly cooked for about 11 and a half hours. There was very cathartic thinking about Mom, and we had a full spread there. Joni would be proud because my fridge is stacked. I overcooked, but you know what?
I'll tell you
we got leftovers for days.
Well, bring some today when you come over. I can use some. All right.
I will.
Happy Thanksgiving, son. And
Happy Thanksgiving.
We'll be at the Swamp on Saturday watching that one. See if your prediction comes true.
Gators are my lock.